his wife and their 6 children until his death at the then ripe old age of 68. He was succeeded by his eldest son, Beauregard, a successful entrepreneur who'd promptly bought up the surrounding land, 50 acres in all. By the time his grandson, Ames, took up residence in the early 1960s, a good chunk of the land had been sold off, leaving the remaining acreage, a lush emerald veld of whispered wealth discreetly dotted with fountains and statuary, to grow into itself like the roots of a hothouse orchid coiled inside its pot. As she strolled along the path to the main house, beneath a bower of ancient oak trees festooned in Spanish moss, Abigail thought back to more carefree days, when she might have been on her way to play tennis or swim in the pool, or go horseback riding with the Merriweather twins, Vaughn and Lila, before she'd become old enough to start helping her mother out after school and on weekends. She'd always taken it at face value whenever Mr. or Mrs. Merriweather would proclaim, in response to a raised eyebrow or murmured comment from one of their friends, "Why, Rosalie and her daughter are like family." For hadn't they always been treated as such? Vaughn and Lila were the closest Abigail had to a brother and sister. She took meals with Vaughn and Lila when their parents were out, and often slept in the spare bed in Lila's room. To the casual observer, watching them play croquet on the lawn or splash around in the pool, Abigail and the twins, born in the same year, might have been family. Except that they looked nothing alike. Abigail was tawny-skinned and long-limbed like her mother, with large dark eyes and thick hair the color of sorghum, while Vaughn and Lila were both fair and blue-eyed as a pair of lion cubs. Lila, fine-boned and dainty, Vaughn, fleet of foot and possessed of a fearless athleticism that by age 16 had landed him in the hospital a few times with broken bones. When she was younger, Abigail hadn't been aware of any class distinction. If anything, it was a badge of honor that her mother kept house for the Merriweathers. No other home was as grand in her view, and no other family as fine. If Mrs. Merriweather drank too much and often took to her bed, and Mr. Merriweather wasn't home much due to the long hours he put in at his law office, it did nothing to diminish their stature in her eyes. It wasn't until they were 13 and Lila and Vaughn enrolled in the exclusive Hearn Academy that the difference in social status became apparent. Even so, the twins went out of their way to include her. They made sure to invite her to their parties, and often asked her along when going out with their friends. When they were alone together, Lila pretended to be envious of Abigail's greater freedom in attending public school, and she mocked the airs put on by her snootier classmates. And woe unto any guest of Vaughn's who directed a derogatory comment at Abigail. Not only was he never invited back, but one boy found himself leaving with a bloody nose. Vaughn was like an older brother to Abigail and Lila. Never mind, they were the same age. Whenever they climbed the water tower out by the old sugar refinery, he always insisted on going last, prepared to catch either of them should they fall. Diving into the quarry, where they picnicked in summer, he was the first one in, to make sure the water was deep enough to keep them from cracking their skulls. And Abigail's sophomore year, when she didn't have a date for the Christmas dance, Vaughn gallantly offered to escort her, making her the envy of every other girl there. Floating into the auditorium in a crimson velveteen dress she'd made herself from a Vogue pattern, she felt every eye on her and the tall, unselfconsciously handsome boy at her side. Eyes in which she saw the two of them reflected in an entirely new light. One that brought the blood rushing to her cheeks and made her suddenly and acutely aware of his arms circling her waist. As he guided her onto the dance floor, she was barely aware of her feet touching the ground. Lila, for her part, became skilled at the art of